Retail workers of Reddit, what's your Black Friday horror story? I worked for a golf superstore as a cashier. Black Friday customers come rushing in and the line starts. I proceed to scan the first item and nothing. The registers are completely down and the lines are growing fast. The only thing we could do is take every transaction manually, write down SKUs, calculate tax, and use the old credit card swipers for 3 hours. I never worked retail during Black Friday again. Story 2. Worked at a store that had a service department. They couldn't ring up anything at the service counter, but they had a computer which made it look like a register. Guy is standing there patiently, waiting to be rung up. Finally, somebody notices him and asks what he needs. "I'd like to pay," he says. "I'm sorry, this isn't a register," replies the service tech. The guy then proceeds to try and convince the service tech to let him pay because the line for the main registers is 3 hours long. Of course, the service tech couldn't because he didn't have a register. He just had a computer for making appointments and such. So after 15 minutes of argument, the guy moves off to find the line. Here's the fun part. While he was arguing, somebody else saw him standing by something that looked like a register and so got in line behind him. Then, people saw the shorter line and got in behind them. With nobody to control it, the line to nowhere grew quickly. 15 minutes was all it took for the not line to snake all the way around the department. So when the doofus who started this whole fiasco went to find the right line, he found the end of the line he had started. Then the guy behind him heard that there wasn't a register, so he followed the first guy. Then the next customer followed the second, and so on. They walked around in a circle for an hour before somebody noticed them. We almost had a riot when a manager had to tell 100 people that they weren't in line and had just waited an hour for nothing. That same year, we had several scuffles at points where the register line had forked into 2 lines. From then on, we marked off a huge register path and had several employees just manage the line. So I guess monkey see, monkey do isn't just a figure of speech, but why didn't this store have staff directing traffic and formulating these lines in the first place? I know that they're overwhelmed with loads of people bum rushing them, but to just kind of let anarchy take over in that situation ended up making like the entire process 50,000 times worse. And I guess people reading this are probably glad now that you can do all your Black Friday shopping online. Story 3. Store is absolutely effing packed, and a larger trailer trash looking woman gets up to the register with 4 coffee machines, about 30 different pieces of clothing, clearly none of which would fit her, a set of pots and pans, and a blender. I'm at the register serving a line of, at this point, probably 20 people. She gets to my register, and I ring everything up. Total comes out to about $200, because most of the crap she's getting is cheap crap that we sell even cheaper on Black Friday. Of course, as soon as I tell her the total, I'm wrong, so is the register apparently. "You double scanned most of it. It should be half that price." "Hell no, I didn't, lady. Learn to count." I wish I could say that to her, but my manager is literally right behind me on the other register and would chew me out like no tomorrow. So, in my nicest, read most sarcastic tone of voice, I reply, "I don't believe I did. You can even see it right here on the register. If you really want me to, I can start over to make sure nothing's scanned more than once, though." Of course, she ignores the whole damn thing and just tries to pay. She's clearly not been to the store before because our old as F register system requires us to take your card and swipe it ourselves. She spends a few seconds looking around for where she can scan her card, and I chime in, "We have to scan it up here, ma'am. System is too old for us to have something where you can scan the card." I'm sorry about that. She's already pissed enough and trying to fight with me about her scanning it herself. Finally, after spitting in my face for a few seconds while I'm forced to smile like the brain-dead monkey corporate thinks I am, she hands me the damned card. I check the name because legally we have to, and we have to see ID as well. Well, I see the card and immediately expect a crap show because the first name on it is David. She hands me her ID and lo and behold, her name isn't David. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't legally charge this card, unless David is with you, in which case I'd need to see his ID." "Are you effing kidding me? This is my son's card. He's letting me use it. He's at home with my husband." F me, as if this crap wasn't bad enough already. "I'm sorry, I can't swipe this card unless it's yours. Do you have a different card on you with your name on it?" After grumbling for a bit, idiotic McFemale Dogface hands over a different card. Go through the normal motions. Card effing declined. F, how can this get any worse? "Your card was declined, ma'am." Cue me getting screamed at in front of an ever-growing, impatient live audience. "Let me talk to your effing manager." At this point, I can only pray that hell itself will swallow this demon up, or at least end me so I don't have to deal with it. My manager turns around from her register, says, "Just a moment, ma'am. I'm finishing up this transaction, then I'll be right with you." Of course, this little old lady ain't got the time for that. At this point, I'm pretty sure my line at the register should be paying me for the entertainment they get out of this lady unloading all of her bat crap on me. My manager finally turns around and has me switch to her register for the time being, while she handles the crazy. I managed to get a couple people through the register while I hear her screaming coming from both sides, as my manager isn't great with being yelled at. How the F did anyone think that was a good idea? I get a few comments and looks from customers basically saying, "I'm so sorry. We're not all terrible." Finally, I hear idiotic McFemale Dogface over there yell that she'll put all her crap back and go shop somewhere else. Thank F. Turns out that's not what she did. Instead, she ended up going to the exit on the other side of our department and trying to walk out with everything in the cart. My manager sees this and calls LP, and so does the cashier on the register down there. LP sends some of their guys over to her, and they try and stop her after calling the police. Now, I didn't get to leave the register because we were effing packed, but I was told she tried to fight a few of the people from LP before the cops got there. Ended up with her getting arrested. The rest of my day sucked anyway, but that made it a bit better. Story 4. I'm not an employee, but I stood behind a lady at Target who was returning a newly bought iPad. She was livid because her iPad wasn't charging. She claimed the tablet had Wi-Fi connection to the store, and it wasn't charging like it was supposed to. She was told that the cord that came with it was the only way to charge it. She balked at the statement and adamantly said that since it's hooked up to Target's free Wi-Fi, it should be charging. Sadly, this is not the case, and left spot not obscenities. Sad to think she thought Wi-Fi charged her iPad. Story 5. About 15 years ago, I was working at a bookstore in a mall. Somehow, around 5 p.m. maybe, I found myself the only employee in the entire store. Not a single coworker to be found, and we were slammed with customers. We usually had music playing in the store, controlled by an ordinary 5-CD stereo in the back office. And of course, this is the day the inoffensive holiday music gets brought into circulation. Around the time I found myself alone, I noticed the stereo had become stuck on repeat, just playing the same song over and over. It was at least an hour before I was able to get away from the counter, and so that was the day I was forced to listen to some kind of generic, a very jazzy Jingle Bells some 30 times back to back. Story 6. Just today, I sold a couch to a guy who drove a Prius with no roof rack. We do not deliver, and he wouldn't leave until we found a way to get this thing secured to his car somehow. Not only had he clearly not planned ahead or thought it through, he was a total jerk about it and insisted on making it our problem. We ended up using half a spool of twine to tie this thing down, and he had to climb in through the window because the twine went through his doors. I really wish I'd taken a picture. At one point, he complained to our GM, who had no idea what we were supposed to have done to appease this moron. Finally, we insisted that he sign a waiver before leaving because we were not about to be held responsible for his own stupidity. Of course, this was also during the busiest part of the day. I don't mind helping load or tie down for customers, but this guy took the cake. Story 7. Worked greets at American Eagle today. My job was to stand at the front and tell you what the sale was. Some lady walked in with like 8 bags and the alarm went off. So I smiled and said that it went off most likely because there's possibly still a tag on one of her items. This was her response. "I just walked in and you're already accusing me of stealing?" And then stormed off. Nothing special, honestly. Just another day of retail. Yeah, small Canadian town life. Story 8. F it, too many horror stories. I'm going to give you my last customer from today. I'm a service advisor at a very large Toyota dealership. My typical cutoff was rolling around. I usually stop writing cars an hour before my shift ends, but I got a car that came in for a wheel rotation. Wrote it up and immediately got it into the shop. My techs knocked it out lickety-split, and I got it over to the wash. I was bored and wanted it done right, and washed it myself. I even vacuumed the car. Drove the car up to the drive-out section, called the customer, and turned in the paperwork to be closed out. Asked my boss for some of the Knott's Berry Farm tickets that all Toyota dealerships and Social are handing out, and when he came to grab his car, I let him know that I was able to wrangle some Knott's tickets for him. His face lit up like Christmas. Hope he has a great holiday season. Alright, so admittedly not quite the ending that I was expecting there. You would typically expect people to respond with wild customers and all kinds of horror stories, so for this guy to, do a nice deed and have the customer be pleased and happy, yeah, it was refreshing to read. Story 9. When I was 15, I got my first actual job. It was at a clothing store, and my first day was Black Friday. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal because I was hired for men's formal wear. When I show up at 4 a.m., the manager tells me I'm working women's shoes today only. Absolute madness. The worst part is shoe salesmen get commission, but since I didn't have employee numbers, I got only minimum wage, losing out on hundreds of dollars of extra pay. Story 10. I worked at Walmart during Black Friday about 12 to 13 years ago. The hot items that year were $10 DVD players and trampolines. The DVD players were stacked on 2 tables near the registers, and the trampolines were in sporting goods. I'm walking to the receiving area in the back, and someone from Sporting Goods asks if I can grab a U-boat or L-cart to load up the last trampoline. I had to go all the way to the grocery store to get one, and as I'm coming back, someone asks about an item, so I walk 2 feet away from my cart, and some woman grabs it and runs towards Sporting Goods. I get there, and the woman and husband are loading up the trampoline, and it wasn't even for them. The other lady that had it and purchased it, had receipt and all, just needed a carryout, said, "Hey, that's mine." And the husband got in her face and said, "What are you going to do about it, female dog?" They started to walk off, and I was shocked at that point, and the husband looked at me and said, "What the F's your problem?" I just smiled and told the sporting good guy to call management. The husband then said, "Run, honey," and they booked it to the front. They made it out of the store with the trampoline, too. Then I get to the front near the $10 DVD players. One older woman grabs the last one left on one of the 2 tables. Another lady grabs the same one. They scuffle. One lady decks the other one into the other table full of $10 DVD players, and they all fall over, and she runs. Never effing again. You know, this is just another day at Walmart. I feel like the store itself is fine, but the people that shop there are just so wild that this could happen pretty much any day at any Walmart. Total chaos. Story 11. It was technically the day after Black Friday, but it was still busy as all hell. I worked as a customer service supervisor at a CompUSA before they closed down. Think Best Buy. And all of my checkers called in sick that morning. All of them. So I'm the only effing one ringing people up for the first 6 hours of the day. When I finally get a 15-minute break, I went into the back area and blew up at the first manager I could find. I was so pissed and stressed. He just sat there and let me vent to him. After a little while, I went back to him and apologized to him, and he was cool with it all. That day sucked. Story 12. When I was in school, I worked at Walmart for the holidays. They had a fun agreement where if you worked Thanksgiving 6 p.m. until Black Friday morning 6 a.m., you didn't have to come in Black Friday. Fun, right? So after Thanksgiving lunch with my boyfriend's family at 4 p.m., I headed to work where I put on an oversized yellow smock with a blue sun on it. I was put in charge of 70-inch plasma screen television vouchers. I was given 7 vouchers to distribute at 8 p.m. so customers could go to the register, pay for the television, and have it loaded into their car around back. So problems arose very quickly. A line for the 70-inch television began as I started my shift at 6 p.m. As soon as 7 people formed a line, I had to turn people away. At 8 p.m., the vouchers were distributed. Customers 1 and 2 were a husband and wife. They were an older couple who brought camping chairs to wait for their 2 vouchers. Here's where the mess started. Customer 8 approaches me for a voucher. I tell him that they've all been distributed and he was free to come back within the hour to see if anyone surrendered their voucher. He then becomes visually distressed and angry, to which there is nothing I could do. In comes customer 1 from before, the older man from the couple. He offers to sell his voucher to customer 8 for what was close to the price of the on-sale television that had not been purchased. Customer 8 agrees reluctantly, pulls out the money in exchange for the television voucher. The older couple then walks off with not only Mrs. Customer 2's television voucher, but also the newly acquired cash to buy said television at the register. In comes customer 9, who addresses me very angrily with, "Hey, you! Aren't you going to do something about that?" While gesturing wildly at the older couple who totally scored and the poor guy who essentially paid double for a Black Friday television. I had to let that customer know that what other customers did with the vouchers was their business. This guy got way too close to me, and one of my coworkers noticed and came to help. The guy then takes off in a huff and claims Walmart, quote, cheated him. 2 months later, I quit to work in my license field and never looked back. Years later, still no regrets. I don't even like going into the store I worked at. Story 13. Not retail, but I worked at a restaurant that is right across the street from the mall, and open Black Friday. So naturally, after, people get great deals on whatever they come eat. Anyway, I'm sitting in back of the house Black Friday morning, waiting on my inevitably long shift to start. It was incredibly busy as it was, but I wasn't about to clock in early. I was BSing with one of the managers when I heard a hostess scream through the walkie, "Help! Help!" So I immediately rushed to the entrance to see two grown men on the ground fighting. One in nothing but his underwear, and my shift lead trying to pull them off of each other while screaming, "Effing stop! This is a family restaurant! There are children here!" I jolted forward in an attempt to break up the fight. This is where it gets weird. Everyone is gathered around this small area, watching or trying to help, when someone grabbed a fire extinguisher and started spraying us with it. So we have a bunch of people trying to break up a fight between a man in his underwear and some other dude, and someone spraying us with a fire extinguisher while we have Christmas carols playing in the background. Finally, we get the fight broken up. Cops show up, the whole 9 yards. Guy 1 got the last TV/voucher from Best Buy, and Guy 2 was very angry about that. So he followed him over to the restaurant to try and buy the TV from him. Guy 1 told Guy 2 to F off, so Guy 2 took off his pants and started to fight Guy 1. Alrighty then. It's crazy the lengths that people will go to just to save like a couple bucks on like a TV. Come on, man. Put your pants back on. Story 14. Worked at Walmart years ago. One of my managers thought she was being sneaky and swapped my Black Friday off shift with an on at 9 a.m. My shifts normally didn't start until 1 and ended at 9, so this was utter bullcrap. I was in the bakery department and had to work all of Thanksgiving the day before, and they ended up needing more help. I came in at 9 a.m. that day and worked a 14-hour shift because most of my team had been given the holiday off. My manager's excuse being, "You're young, they have families they need to be with and kids to celebrate with." So I was pretty angry. I found out that the Black Friday sale was a 65-inch LCD TV and electronics in PS3s. So needless to say, it was going to be a bloodbath. I stayed in my department because there was literally no one else there and caught up on much-needed sanitation. When the manager found out before the sale started, she came my way to rain down fire, brimstone, and bullcrap on me. Thankfully, I could use their own bullcrap policies against them. There needs to be at least one member of the bakery crew on hand to write on the cakes, and since I was the only one there, they were crap out of luck. I got out of Black Friday bullcrap, got an easy day of work, and the perfect spot to watch the chaos, all while screwing over a manager I hated. It was a beautiful day. Story 15. This happened just today, actually. I work at Starbucks. Went to do my routine lobby and bathroom check, just to clean up during the craziness. Went into the men's restroom, and there was crap smeared all over the walls, toilet seat, and mirror. Really had no other choice but to clean it up with my coworker. Definitely the most disgusting crap, literally, I've ever had to do in my life. Update. Wow, this blew up. So I talked to my manager and showed her this exact post, reading a bunch of the replies. She wasn't mad, but in a sense of awe that we were willing to clean up crap. Even she said she would never do that. We went over the policy and reviewed our resources in case this happens. There gets a point where your mind is literally go, go, go from the craziness of customers and orders. The poop didn't seem to faze me at all. I'm still baffled at who wipes poop on the walls at a Starbucks. I don't think we pissed off anyone that bad. The good news is that my boss said she's so thankful to have me and all that good stuff. But yes, we do have a number to contact in case someone decides to smear their feces everywhere. In the meantime, we are supposed to just lock the door and put a sign on the front. Thank you to everyone for helping me out. I did not expect the load of replies. I now know not to clean up the poop. I feel stupid for doing it, but I'm glad I now know. Story 16. I work at a kid's store where almost everything was half off today. But the thing is, I normally help moms and grandparents at the register, so I don't see Best Buy-style murder over televisions. I get old ladies yelling at my coworkers over the price of smiley face pillows and women bringing in hundreds of dollars worth of clothing and kitty makeup they bought weeks before at full price, just to buy it all back right away at sale price after the return's over. A grandpa shouted, "This is bullcrap," at me because I told him we were out of bathrobes. Good times. Edit. Reading all these replies has taught me that the store I work in has a completely trash return policy. We do all our returns right then and there in front of the customer's face, sometimes without receipts. and I have to get a manager to come look at every return before I do it at the register. So there's no way for me to lie to them to make them leave. Sigh. Story 17. Be me, working my first job, second weekend, and I'm working the floor at a Best Buy on Black Friday. I wasn't that great at my job, so they had me running people from the line they had set up to different registers and quickly answering questions from customers. No big deal. At about 1 a.m., as I'm running customers back and forth, we hear a commotion on the other side of the store and a few police officers come in. Turns out some guy had broken a bit of plastic off one of the information plaques and tried to use the pointy bit to stab an employee in the neck. I never found out why he did it. People are crazy. I'm so incredibly thankful to not be working retail anymore. Story 18. When I was working at Walmart, me and another coworker had a lady come during our Black Thursday sale with her children. She was going around shopping with her kids for a while, but then she saw me and my coworker in the bedding department and left her children with us, asking for us to watch them while she went to get some products. Before we were able to tell her no, she disappears and doesn't come back for her kids for 20 minutes. Both of us are just standing there, watching her kids slowly freak out and cry for their mother, wondering if she's going to come back. My supervisor then walks by and sees what's going on, and when we filled her in, she was quite annoyed with the mother, who by this point has yet to make an appearance. When Mom finally showed, her husband rushed to her, and my supervisor had a chat with her. Unfortunately, I didn't catch what my supervisor said to her. Story 19. Someone else's experience reminded me of one I had a few years back. I worked at a toy store in the mall, really fancy mall, and we only sold one brand of toys. Anyways, we were all about interacting with the parents and especially making the kids feel special. It was probably the best place in retail to work, not gonna lie. If I could have had full time with benefits, I'd have stayed. Anyhow, early December, a woman comes into the store with her two children, probably aged 5 and 7, no older than that. I hear her say, "I'll be back, stay here," and she just leaves them. Not a word to us, she just vanishes. Within minutes it got busy, as in 50 customers plus kids. There are only 3 employees in the store, 2 on register, then there's me, the shift manager, supposed to be helping people shop. There is no way I'm taking my eyes off of these kids, but there are too many people here. 5 minutes go by, then 10, then 15. I'm checking in with these little dudes to see how they're holding up. They're just fine, but I'm the type who takes 100% responsibility for children in my store. I call mall security because I'm freaking out about the need to watch them. At this point, I have to make a return and do a bunch of customer service. No way to keep track of the kids. Turns out, mall security called the cops. The officers show up about 25 minutes after this lady left her kids. The lady gets down and makes small talk with the boys while the man waits outside. Things slow to a crawl in the store, so my fellow employees entertain the boys while I speak with the officers. Apparently their mother had gone to the other mall across the effing 4-lane street at 7:30 p.m. during crazy busy shopping time. She eventually did come back for them, but it had been close to an hour. And in Ohio, that is way past what counts as child abandonment. I don't know what happened to her/them, but all I remembered is the shock of, who the hell thinks that's a good idea? And OMG, is she going to jail? While I watch the officers escort her and her children away. Edit. I didn't want to name the store because I've still got an ongoing addiction/love affair with the brand, but I'll spare everyone from having to play more than 20 questions any longer. It was the Lego store. Story 20. I worked as a cashier at Target 2 years ago on Black Friday. My particular store opened at 7 on Thanksgiving, and I had to be there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I don't know how many other stores do it, but for mine, we had vouchers for the big ticket items like the new iPads and huge HD TVs, etc. So there usually wasn't a stampede of people, and the lines to the registers were set up very efficiently. Seeing all the preparation to avoid making it a crap show, I began to feel hopeful that it would be an okay night, well worth the holiday pay, as the doors were unlocked. I could not have been more wrong. About midnight, 2 large women come to my register with 4 carts piled up with random crap that they had coupons for. Just imagine 40 bottles of shampoo, 50 sticks of deodorant, 25 2 liters of soda, etc., all just piled in there. I take a deep breath and begin scanning items, and as I tell them the total, somewhere around $800, one of them pulls out a wad of tightly damp coupons from her bra. Yuck. Sorry, let's keep going. Stifling the urge to vomit, I accept them and proceed to scan/attempt to scan roughly 200 coupons. After doing about 20 of them, with only 3 or 4 working, I decided to look at the coupons and sort them into an expired and non-expired, as well as coupons from other stores that we didn't take. We would take manufacturer's coupons and Target coupons, but we wouldn't take Bed Bath & Beyond coupons. About 20 minutes later, some coupons were hard to make out because of the dampness, and the ladies insisting I sort through them all, I finalized the tally and proceeded to scan the maybe 30 coupons that were valid/acceptable. The ladies realized that the pile is significantly shorter than it should have been and start female dogging at me about the lack of coupons. I explain the situation and continue scanning and then put them away in the register. The lovely part came when the ladies realized their total was only reduced to around $700. Screaming that I was trying to scam them, the lady demanded I scan all the coupons. I politely explained that I could not scan the majority due to them being expired or unusable at our store. She then asked what discounts I could give her, and when I said that I can't give her any besides the normal 5% if she paid with a red card, she began pulling at the neckline of her shirt, asking if there is anything she could do to get a discount. Let me stop here and say that I'm partial to the thicker female form, but I'm not particularly attracted to someone who looks like a pregnant Michelin man. So I again politely refused and said if they had any more valid coupons, I would be happy to scan them. Otherwise, their total was so many dollars. Now for the fun part. The two land whales decide their rights have been infringed upon and begin screaming profanities, prompting the GSTL, General Sales Team Lead, and the two AP officers to come to my register rather quickly. Upon seeing people who looked in charge, the ladies began telling them how I had failed to do my job, etc. After telling my boss what I did, she agreed with me and that I was following the store's policy. The ladies then tipped over all 4 carts full of their crap, spilling it all over the aisle, threw change at me and my GSTL, and proceeded to waddle out of the store. I quit right then and there, and am now loving my job at the bakery. Story 21. I work at a gas station, so I'm somewhat immune to Black Friday-itis. The worst we got this morning was cars lined up to get gas. On the other hand, we had a few Walmart workers come in, and they looked like they just came back from the war. Both of them had ladies ram their carts into their legs to get at the merch. The guy said it was just a flurry of shredded plastic and hands when they kicked off the sales. Nobody got a full break, and the catered food was cold and well picked over by the time they could break. A car had sideswiped another car, damaging the paint pretty bad, and tried to drive off. On top of all, they're not getting time and a half for working Thursday night into Friday morning, cause it's not technically a holiday anymore. At least he got a homemade cupcake. I brought in cupcakes for the ladies working Thanksgiving at my job. Edit. I had that Walmart employee as a customer again today. He told my boss and I about how one of his coworkers was practically trampled. She's a petite little thing and got tripped, accidentally this time, not on purpose like the cart rammers, by one customer, fell down, and had several more walk on/over her. She's okay, she's just sore and has bruising all over her legs. We seriously thought he was bullcrapping us at first on this story, but he was dead serious. Story 22. About 6 years ago, I was working at a mall bookstore's cafe. I had the opening shift, which, thankfully, because it was in a mall, was 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Unfortunately, the late shift person called in sick, so I had 2 hours off before a 4 p.m. to close shift. While that sucks, it isn't the worst part of the day. I actually had a customer who was stalking me and spent the entire day sitting in the cafe reading a book and occasionally coming up to order something new. Anytime I wasn't behind the counter or in the back room, he followed me around, including during my 2-hour shift gap. I didn't dare go to my car in my break because I didn't want him knowing what it looked like, and my manager didn't want to call security on him if he didn't actually approach me. Worst Black Friday ever. Luckily, 2 weeks later, he did approach me while I was working and asked if he could clip my fingernails as a keepsake. That was enough to get him banned from not only the store, but also the mall. My manager also made sure someone walked me to my car for the next few months, so it was all good. Story 23. I work at the largest lingerie retailer in the country. We had a security guard last night for the beginning of Black Friday. A Southern Belle mother decided she didn't want to wait in a 50-person deep line, and she would cut. Our security guard asked her multiple times to step to the back of the line or leave. She proceeded to ream him with every curse word in the book, and ended by threatening him with a gun she had in her bag. This will be my last holiday in retail. Okay, that certainly escalated quickly. I wouldn't put it past anyone to just start reaming with profanities, but then to bust out a gun because someone is asking you to move to the back of the line and you're trying to cut? What in the world is wrong with people? Story 24. I worked at a big box store last year. I was in charge of answering the phone. Only our cordless handsets were broken, so I literally could not leave the fitting room counter because that's where the landline was plugged in. So of course it was super busy, and I find out right away that if I parked a call and walkied the proper department to take the call, that call would not be taken because all the other employees were too busy assisting customers who were in the store. Even if I asked a question about item availability over the walkie, nobody answered because they were too damn busy. Yes, our store had little scanner devices that we could use to check on item availability, but not a single damn member of management in that store thought to reserve one for the telephone operator. After asking for one over the walkie 3 times and receiving no response, I gave up. The end result of this was that customers would call to see if we had an item in stock, and I would have to tell them that, to be honest, I had no idea. As you can imagine, the customers did not like this at all. One of the managers installed new cordless handsets about an hour before my shift ended, but the 8 hours prior had been absolute hell. Oh, and a few days later, I got pulled aside by a supervisor who hadn't even been in the store during my shift that day. She said that apparently I wasn't my usual cheery self on Black Friday, and that I had told a customer over the phone that I didn't know if we had an item in stock. The customer had actually called back and complained. It took everything I had not to go off on her, and the only reason I didn't was because she wasn't there during my shift and none of it was her fault. But to the other members of management, of effing course I told that person I didn't know if his item was in stock. I had literally no effing way of knowing. You did not give me any of the tools I needed to do my effing job, and you ignored me when I asked for them. And then you want to coach me on my customer service? Oh, hell no. That's on you, effers. I'm so glad I no longer work there. Story 25. I'm working in a high-end clothing store that rarely goes on sale. It's a small storefront, so any more than 20 people inside and it's pretty packed. It's effing 9:30 in the morning, and this family comes in with 2 kids who are effing wired on sugar, running around acting like idiots, and the parents are doing F all because their favorite douchebag jeans are 40% off. The store has a bunch of metal pots and baskets used for display, which we couldn't put in the back because corporate would throw a crap fit. Effing little Timmy almost dies by near falling on a large metal basket with sharp pokey things on it. My manager, in a calm but obviously annoyed tone, says, "Kids, it's not a playground." This leads Sally Soccer Mom to lose it. "How dare you talk to my kids like that? Who the F do you think you are?" This naturally cues her husband to become Billy Badass and try to fight my manager, who is all of 5'6" and maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. I walk over, being 6 foot and 190 pounds, and slightly more able to defend myself from Billy Badass, and ask them to leave the store or I'll call security. Get told to F myself because they aren't leaving, so quote, I better call the pansy-ass mall security. Mall security shows up, and by the grace of the Black Friday retail gods, the one security officer who's actually intimidating responds. Former university football player, like 6'6" and built like a brick crap house. Billy Badass suddenly no longer wishes to engage in fisticuffs with the pansy-ass mall security and quickly leaves with his family with security in tow. Story 26. I used to work at Walmart during the late 90s. I worked overnights unloading trucks, and back then, the store I worked at didn't have mechanized lifts to get stuff up into the bins in the back, so stock reserved for the Blitz sale was all thrown up there by hand. Anyways, 3 hours to go, we had to get 3 pallets worth of 19-inch symphonic CRT TVs down. My coworker, Alan, didn't want to throw them down one at a time, so he pushed a pallet of Pampers down first, followed by all 3 pallets of TVs. Over the next few days, several of those TVs came back as returns. I try to think that they were crap, but also wonder how many were damaged during the fall. Story 28. I got hired at Borders to be seasonal help from November through the holidays. It was the location on Michigan Avenue in downtown Chicago and was the flagship store for the company. I had a couple of weeks of regular work right before Black Friday, and it was pretty busy. Then I thought Black Friday would be easy. I was so wrong. I had never had such a stressful experience. We had a constant line of about 30 people the entire day, and no matter how fast we tried to go, it would never die down. On top of that, we had people getting mad that they were sold out of certain books and would flip out even more when I offered to order one for them. I mean, you would expect these kinds of things at Walmart, but I never thought I would be working for a bookstore. Story 29. Former GameStop manager. The worst one I ever worked was 2006. Everyone wanted a damn Wii. When I got to the store at 4 a.m. to prep for the 5 a.m. opening, there were people wrapped around the shopping center in a line for the damn thing, even though I had a sign on the door explicitly stating that we could only guarantee them for the first 6 people. When I made the announcement to the folks in line, I thought I was about to get my ass kicked by more than a couple of pissed grandmas and soccer moms who had been waiting since midnight. After opening, our systems were unbearably slow in processing credit cards, but they still worked. The rest of the day was busy, but not too terrible, other than the female doggy people who couldn't find a Wii. Fast forward to 3 days later. A lady walks into the store with a bank statement and starts laying on to me about her card being charged $200 4 times. Processing. Not drafted yet, by the way. She insists that she won't walk out until I give her $600 cash from the register. It ended with her and I on speakerphone with my district manager, who politely told her to piss off and call her bank. Cops were very nearly called during the ensuing screaming. This was with a store packed with customers. Fun stuff. As it turned out, our credit card processor had been overwhelmed that day, and this turned out to be a wide issue. It was the explanation for the system slowdown on Black Friday. The charges dropped off after a couple of days. Edit. As others have mentioned, she had every reason to be pissed. I would be too. This woman made it very personal, to the point where she was taking liberties with my sexuality and parentage. Be pissed, but you can be angry without being a raging idiot. Story 30. Worked at a car wash in college. We're busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest, but we're keeping up. Then, an asshat comes in with a minivan. Now, this alone would merit a fine story in and of itself, but here, we get to the good, scratch that, bad part. Puke all over his dashboard. By which I mean puke of biblical proportion. Apparently, the guy out selling the car washes was too busy to notice said puke, and put him in line. So the guy makes it to us at the Vax. I see the puke on the dashboard and I start to slide open the rear door. And that's when I see it. We're talking an honest-to-God pond of puke in the back. Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie, grandma's own whipped potatoes and gravy. Said asshat says, Uncle Ned had too much to drink yesterday, so my brother offered to drive him home. Uncle Ned upchucked first. That's when my niece lost it in the back seat too, he smiles. Do you think you're going to be able to get it up? Now, mind you, if we were slow, we wouldn't do it. But to pull shenanigans of this caliber when we're this busy, I'm about to go full ape crap and start clubbing him with my vac nozzle when my quick-thinking partner on vac steps in and says, Sorry sir, our union contract prohibits us from removing biological waste. Slams the door shut and sends a card down the conveyor. The guy stands there slack-jawed and stammers out, I didn't even know car washes had unions. We do today, he grins and walks away. Story 31. This was about 20 years ago, and I don't recall if it was actually Black Friday or just holiday shopping season. Working at Costco, I witnessed a fistfight between 2 men over a parking space. Started just as you'd imagine. Car A is hovering, waiting for someone loading up their car to leave, and when they do, car B swoops in from the other direction into the spot. It was a fairly even matchup, until the girlfriend of one of them decided to give an assist with some pepper spray. She managed to pretty effectively get both of them in the face, ending the fight. By the time the ambulance and police car made their appearance, everyone trying to get in and out of that busy parking lot was pretty screwed. Story 32. I also worked at Best Buy. 2001. I won't name location. To this day, Best Buy was one of the worst jobs I ever had. 6 a.m., mall store, people were climbing the gates, literally. They opened the gates and this massive flood of people ran from front to back. Some ran past me, spun around, and screamed a question at me, then darted off again. Management told us that morning that it was a day we'd do damn near $1 million in business. In one day. Therefore, it really didn't matter how we treated people. Sell service plans, sell accessories. The cash flow and revenues will be there. Make our numbers look good. Paraphrasing. One woman punched another and took the last of some digital camera to the front of the store. My tall, lanky friend reached between 2 people arguing over the last hard drive, took it from them, and handed it to some other guy and told them, if you're going to act like children, I'll treat you as such. I got moved up front to work crowd control. They'd lined up a bunch of big screen TVs to channel people down the media aisles. CDs, and DVDs, which those lines went all the way down those aisles, and then all the way back around the outside. I had customers tell me they were glad I was there because they were going to knock out the guy that was there before me. I'm pretty sure 1 to 2 of those TVs were tipped over as well. In total, an absolute crap show that I do not wish upon anybody. I refuse to go shopping on Black Friday now. Story 33. Had my first ever in-person Black Friday shopping experience this morning in an attempt to get Christmas shopping all sorted before the start of December. Having watched some videos on YouTube, I had a fair idea of what to expect. Turned up at 6:30, ready to rumble. Was treated to hot chocolate and cookies by the staff, who were dressed up as Santa, Mrs. Claus, and their elves. Invited in out of the cold, posed for photos, almost got involved singing in some carols, got all the stuff I was looking for, and back on the road again in 30 minutes. 10 out of 10 would brave the hell of Canadian Black Friday shopping again. Well, it sounds like YouTube is your best friend here, so if you go in prepared, there's nothing to be scared of or worried about, right? Nah, you just got lucky. Good for you, though. Story 34. Okay, so I work at this retail chain, Always 11, and it's expected that since we're a trendy clothing store, we're going to be busy. What I, weren't expecting was to deal with this family who had well over $600 worth of clothing in bags waiting to be scanned, folded, and bagged. Each person, there's 5 people in this family, mom, dad, daughter, aunt, and cousin, has maybe 5 to 6 unique items as well as basic shirts, leggings, sweaters, etc. After folding maybe 10 items, I start to fold another and the mom says, actually, those need to be bagged separately from these clothes. All of them need to be in separate bags. It's 12 p.m. on Friday. 12 on a Black Friday. We have a line already of maybe 25 people, and we have all 5 registers open and trying to get as many people as possible, but I have to go and bag these items. It's annoying as heck, and it took over 20 minutes to get through everything. Fold everything to the aunt's folding standard to boot. So finally, it's time to tell the total and for the family to pay. I tell them their total, which is around $620, and they take forever to pay and leave. So finally, I go to check out my next new customer, this really nice black lady who's buying jewelry for her sister as a Christmas gift. Her husband is retired Army, and she's proud of him. Her total is like $48, and she hands me a $100 bill. I check to make sure it's real and press page down to go to the next page to complete the transaction, and the servers are down. All of the registers are full of people trying to pay, and now we have a line that's getting close to one of the doors in the store, and the servers go down. We have to manually write down the item numbers of the things that are getting sold, as well as having to manually run credit card machines like it's 1950. It took over 10 minutes to do a single customer, and the servers were down for what felt like hours. Definitely not a good day. Story 35. My first Black Friday was gross. We were relatively calm, and then suddenly, a lady bursts into the store with a cart from Target and heads to our bathroom. I shrug it off. A few minutes later, a customer asks where the bathroom is, and I point her to it. She comes back seconds later saying that someone used the bathroom on the floor. It was my first job and my first Black Friday, so I called a manager. My manager went in and rushed out. Apparently, the lady who first rushed in took a crap but missed. Instead of in, she did it next to the toilet bowl. My manager ended up having to clean it up. Thank God for not being certified in bodily fluid cleanup. I went outside the bathroom and saw cart tracks of poo making a little path through the store. I have no clue how it got on the wheel. I mopped it up later in the day and found another poo spot by/almost under one of the couches. I have no clue how that happened. It was disgusting. Surprisingly, I was still able to eat after that, but my manager couldn't. We haven't had anything like that happen again, and instead of Black Friday, it was known as Brown Friday. Story 36. I only ever worked one Black Friday in my life. It was during my time at a craft store. There are 2 things that were constant during my year working there. The fact that every day was extremely slow because we were never too busy, and the fact that for some reason, 90% of the customers that came in were more rude than anywhere else I've ever worked. So I'm thinking I'll have the typical rudeness, but it won't be too bad because we're always so slow. I couldn't be more wrong. For the first time ever, I couldn't spend Thanksgiving with my family because I had to work at 8 p.m., so I was already in a bad mood. That night, I had things thrown at me multiple times, was screamed at much more than usual, and got trampled by a gang of old ladies as I was attempting to head back to the break room. But the worst moment came when a customer tried to buy a pack of scrapbook page protectors. The customer was attempting to buy a pack of 25, but was convinced the price was wrong because she was looking at the sticker for the pack of 10. She screamed at me for a good 5 minutes while I calmly tried to explain the price. Finally, it ended with the quote, "You're ruining my Thanksgiving, you stupid female dog." Trying not to scream back after that comment, I replied with, "I'm sorry to hear that, but unfortunately, I cannot give you the lower price as it was not mislabeled." She responded to that by throwing a punch, which I ducked. My manager saw the whole thing, and the customer was escorted out and banned from our store. I think it's so ridiculous how people working in frontline customer service have to just sit there and take abuse, like literal abuse like that. People throwing punches, and heaven forbid you try to defend yourself and fight back. Then all of a sudden your butt's sitting on the stove, and you could potentially be served your walk-in papers just for that. I mean, it's just, man, that's crazy. So crazy. Story 37. I was working at a small mom-and-pop toy shop back in 1993, and it was the Friday after Thanksgiving. End of a long day. We were about to close. I had to refuse a customer because she wanted to write a check with no ID for a huge purchase. Big dollar item. Can't recall what. The customer kept yelling, "Look at me! Look at me! Look at me!" So I looked at her, but nothing happened. Super awkward. As lead clerk, I would have been fired for sure if I took a check with no driver's license/state ID, and I loved that job at the time. My coworkers were my best friends, so I apologized for the policy best as I could and offered to hold her items for the next day or when she could locate her ID. Can't exactly recall. After a few more "look at me" shouts, she stormed out. Then my coworker let me know it was Dionne Warwick. He thought I knew, so he didn't say anything, because earlier that morning I was telling him about how much I hated the "That's What Friends Are For" song. I had no idea. Story 38. Oh boy, a reason to tell the story of what happened today. So I work at the largest consumer electronics store in the US. I really do love my job. Management is easy to work with, me, etc. Black Friday, however, sucks. Just sucks. So much. Today is like any other. I get there about 45 minutes before we open at 8 a.m. Help everyone prepare, etc. Store opens, things are going smoothly. I'm wearing a sweater over my uniform because it was slightly chilly outside. So I'm about an hour into my shift and something dawns on me. I'm sweating, like really, really bad. Now, I'm a big guy, but not big enough to be sweating while standing still, so I knew something was wrong. It dawns on me that I'm suddenly getting really, really sick. I call one of my coworkers over and tell them to finish this transaction I'm on, and I bolt. Now, fun fact about our store is, we're really small. So small, in fact, that the men's bathroom only has one toilet. So I burst into the door, and it's shut and locked. So into the trash can, all of my Thanksgiving goes. I'm just heaving into the trash can. Some guy walked in on me and just noped the F out. I felt like garbage. So I finish and manage to worm my way back outside, and my GM looks at me, and he can tell that I'm sick. He tells me to hop on a register no one uses, and I just stand there in my own corner for about 10 minutes. Then it hits me again. Off running I go again. Thank God the stall is open. So I just start all over again, but thankfully I'm in my own area. Afterwards, I buy a water and sit in the break room to try and battle this inner demon that's trying to kill me from the inside out. It wins. It wins, and it makes it infinitely worse. Throw up in the trash can in the break room, and then it starts coming out the other end. So I immediately turn and sprint into the bathroom and drag the trash can inside with me. So I call my GM from inside the bathroom and beg him to let me leave, and thankfully he trusts me enough to let me go. Story 39. Circa 2009. I worked at Hollister. It was a crappy job, but it really lived up to that on Black Friday. I worked dressing rooms, and I simply looked at how much beach-themed, rugged, overpriced items you had and walked you 8 feet to a fitting room. This day, however, a larger woman came up to me with 5 to 6 pair of jeans. Keep in mind, they only went up to size 11, which really isn't that big. Not my rule, don't blame me, and I got her a room. She spent maybe 15 minutes in there, which is a long-ass time in this scenario. She came out with nothing, which was not unusual, and seconds later I went in to get all her rejected clothes. Hollister usually smells like a effing bomb of pine and man musk exploded, but this day I was overpowered with the smell of crap as I entered the room. Homegirl had obviously tried so hard to squeeze into these jeans that she crapped in them, and ran it up the inside seam to the top. Maybe it was a reverse hate crime, I don't know. I refused to fill out a damage report, and my manager was okay with that. That $5.25 an hour job wasn't worth me inspecting the damage to submit to corporate and getting hepatitis. Totally agree. Certain jobs just aren't worth the struggle, and for you to investigate those crappy blue jeans for $5.25 an hour, no. If they tried to force you to do that, you say, okay, this is my last day. See ya. Story 40. Oh man, this caught late. I'll never get it upvoted, but F it. Worked in retail for years, and Black Friday was the big one. I worked selling digital cameras. We're really at the height of popularity. This guy came in with his 10-year-old kid and took a crappy camera that we had this protective wire called spider wrap or something. Anyway, he took it from the shelf and was walking around the whole store for a real long time and never bought a thing. Just walked around with the camera while his kid was playing video games. Eventually, he wandered near the bathroom and snuck in with the camera. Our loss protection guy saw him right away and immediately went into the bathroom. He was in the stall for a while, so eventually the loss protection guy started banging on the stall door, saying something like, "We know you have a camera, sir." Long story short, he was trying to flush the camera down the toilet. I guess he figured if he flushed the camera down the toilet successfully, he could rip the box apart and flush that too. Only problem was he effed the toilet up good and made a bit of a mess. Eventually, he gave up and came out with an empty box. One of the managers said that we needed to recover that camera to prove he stole it. So another manager of ours was like, F it, and pulled his sleeve up and went in. It was hilarious to see one of the supervisors dry heave when he saw the manager fish for a digital camera in a toilet. Anyway, they found the camera and called the cops. To make matters worse, he barely spoke English and we needed his son to translate. It was kind of sad to see it go down like that. Quite a story to tell. Definitely made it an interesting day. TLDR, caught a guy stealing a camera and he tried to flush it down the toilet. Story 41. Just got home. Sorry. Got a temp job leading a Christmas department at a large fishing store, and there's a new girl, day one, talking on her cell phone. I'm not in uniform, yet you get my 40% off and Black Friday deals for Christmas presents, and I walked by her and said, "You're not supposed to be on your cell phone at work." She says, "Who the hell are you?" I walked away and checked in, and she was still on her cell phone. Then she left her shift 2 hours in, so yeah. 2 write-ups in one day. Story 42. I worked a 12-hour Black Friday shift, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., at a now out-of-business sporting goods store. A couple notable things from that day. Our sale was a nightmare. It was literally a deal you could get any other time of the year, but people went nuts because it was Black Friday. Buy one, get one half off, all shoes. Except in the long, small paragraph below the deal, the coupon claimed that this did not include Nike shoes among many other popular shoe models from other brands. Cue customers throwing a fit when they came up to the register and saw that the deal didn't go through. After 20 minutes, my manager got so fed up, he just started overriding the transactions because every cashier was getting screamed at. My manager told us not to do any returns on Black Friday, as it took a long time and would hold up the line, but also because people would try and return big-ticket items, then buy them again for cheap with the Black Friday price. I had this couple come up and try to return a small trampoline, and I knew for a fact that they were just trying to buy it again because it was on sale for $10 less than the price they paid. I informed them that I couldn't, and the wife freaked out and female dogged at me for a good 5 minutes. My manager basically told her to leave, and she was fuming, while the husband tried to calm her down. 2 hours later, the husband is back wearing different clothes, sunglasses, and a baseball hat. Did he think changing his appearance would change our return policy that day? He came when my manager was on break. After I recognized him, I told him I couldn't do the transaction. He then threatened to follow me out after my shift and break my legs, and then tell my manager something nasty about me, etc. Honestly, it was a bunch of crap and very disturbing, but everyone was way too busy to notice or care that I had just did his effing return. People are crazy. I was a total zombie after that shift. That store chain was a crap show. Same place where I had a guy high on meth chase me around the store. Seriously, not surprised the chain tanked so quickly and went out of business. Story 43. I used to work security at the only shopping mall in town. It was a later shift on Friday itself, as most of the crowd was gone and the stores were starting to close. I'm walking patrol near one of the seating areas and I notice a couple sitting with a small boy, maybe 2 years old, who's crying. They tell me that they found him without his parents. The child is nonverbal, just bawling, and can't tell us anything about his family. The entire team goes into action. Me and another teammate take the child to several of the nearby stores, hoping to find his parents. After about 10 minutes, I go back to the seating area and sit with the child while the rest of the team continues to search for the parents. My heart is breaking at this point from the obvious terror that the child is feeling. An employee from one of the jewelry stores nearby ends up bringing out one of the teddy bears for the kid. He calms down a bit. Finally, it's been half an hour and we can't find the kid's parents anywhere. Per policy, we call the police. Because there are actual emergency situations going on, it takes the police almost half an hour to get there. At this point, the child has been separated from his parents for more than an hour. As the officer's talking to me, my supervisor radios in that he found the parents. He comes walking up with a young couple, maybe in their early 30s, who have 5 more kids in tow. Apparently, they had been shopping in the Walmart that is attached to the mall and hadn't noticed until they got out to the car that they were missing a child. The siblings were more relieved than the parents that they were reunited with the toddler. And to top it all off, the mother asked in a very annoyed tone of voice where he had gotten the teddy bear. The officer asked the parents some questions to make sure that there was no obvious abuse going on, got their information, I'm hoping so that child welfare could follow up, and let the family happily go on their way. Story 44. A few years ago, I was a cashier for a department store, and the line was down the middle of the whole store. The way it worked was the next person in line went to the next open register. Normally, people lined up at the individual registers, so every once in a while, people would start to line up at the register, and we had to point them to the line. 99% of the time, there was no issue. Until this Indian couple, who were regulars and always tried to get us to use old or ineligible coupons, came in. I noticed they looked like they were trying to line up by a register and told them the line was somewhere else. They said they were just going over some stuff, so I went back to ringing my customer up. Then, when I called for the next person, those 2 a-holes stroll up and cut everyone in line. I told them they weren't in line and they had to go to the back. They start yelling at me like I just kicked their cancer-ridden kid off a effing overpass, as the wild line behind them is yelling at them to get in the back. They threw the store flyer at me and left in a huff. About 20 minutes later, they come back and start angrily talking to my manager. She comes to get me and says she thinks they just want an apology. Whatever, I can pretend to be contrite if it means they leave. Turns out, they just wanted to yell at me some more and demand my manager fire me on the spot, which she wasn't going to do because that's effing ridiculous. And they leave in a huff again. A couple of weeks later, my boss asked me to write down exactly everything that had happened, with no embellishments and approximate times. Turns out, they were threatening legal action and saying I refused them service because I was racist. After reading my story and checking security tapes, the store said if they wanted to press charges, they'd see them in court and would back me. That was the last I heard from them. F retail. I can never understate how much solace I get from knowing I will never have to deal with that crap or the miserable idiots that roam its damned halls again in my life. I would literally self-unalive before working retail again. Story 45. Actually worked it tonight for the first time. Get to the store around 3 and there was a line around the building. Oh, well crap. Usual busy as hell story up until I asked to help some elderly ladies with the carryout. They smiled as we were walking out, but as we passed through the doors, our alarms went off. Our policy says we have to rescan/recheck the items, and these ladies start to freak the F out, saying our systems are screwed up, they didn't do anything, I put something in their cart. We open up their boxes and find several cartons of ammo. So at this point we have to call the cops, but they decide to, very slowly, book it, but we're not allowed to follow them out, so I see them make it to their van and drive away. Story 46. 2 separate promotions were on, both of which were clearly stated on the big-ass, bold-ass, brazen-ass, emblazoned-ass sign in the front of the store. Jeans, $60. This was half the regular price. Everything else? 40% off. Lady with a big peroxide-laden updo and a bulky synthetic fur coat, which is entirely impractical in the mall on Black effing Friday, marches up to the register. I greet her and ring her stuff through and tell her the total. Then she says, it shouldn't be that much. The jeans are 40% off $60, aren't they? I can understand her mistake, considering the rush of the crowds and the possible heat rash she has, so I politely explain that the promotions are separate. The jeans are on for half of their regular price, and the rest of the store is 40% off. Well, apparently, Donatella Versace isn't too pleased about this. After insisting that I was wrong and she, the customer, was correct, I calmly explained the promotion again. Cue this woman angrily pointing at the sign, which clearly states she is wrong, and insisting that the $60 jeans are to be discounted by a further 40%. I explain it to her again. Then she pulls out the big guns and says this: "You're wrong. That's false advertising. You have to give me the sale that's on the sign. If you don't, you're breaking the law. This is Canada, and we have laws, and you're breaking them." Suppressing my internal urge to mockingly tell her to call the effing police, I explain to her that it's out of my control, and I can only offer her the price set by the company. She continues to irately insist that I'm wrong and I'm a criminal. I tell her she can call customer service, to which she replied, I'm not spending an hour on the phone with them. I'm calling the Department of Justice. You'll hear from them soon enough. Stomps out. Never did get sued after. Just a lot of pity from the people behind her. Story 47. One of 4 girls was working at the jewelry counter, and a customer shoved one of the huge spinning cases that sit on top of the counter right into her back. Cut her and bruised her bad. Craziest part, the lady did it for no reason. We reviewed the tape to see what the F happened. No one saw, and we watched the lady walk up, loom around, and just rear back and shove it forward with all her might. Then try to walk away out the door like she didn't see a thing. Middle of the rush. She hadn't even spoken to anyone or picked up merchandise, and no one knew her or have seen her since. Story 48. We don't have a horror story. Our business is failing. Edit. I just woke up. Didn't expect people to respond to my comment. Haha. Nonetheless, I think I should offer you guys the story. It's not so much a retail shop. It's more half of it is a restaurant/retail, and for obvious reasons I cannot explain what shop this is. So we're failing, not because of the retail side of the store, but the restaurant side, which effectively effed up everything possible. So when you walk into the store, you have the restaurant first and then the retail section behind, which in itself is massively stupid because our business is meant to focus more on the retail rather than the restaurant. Hence why during Black Friday we barely have customers, because it's nearly unnoticeable that we are a retail outlet. But moving on to the main issue, on how the restaurant is failing our entire store. The restaurant is known for having a terrible range of food that does not compete with our competitors. Our food is offered in a box and very limited, whereas our rivals are much fancier with their food and don't serve it in a box. Always understaffed, then overstaffed somehow. We make less than $1,000 a day. Because we make less than $1,000 a day, our supervisor tells us not to come for some shifts because, quote, it's not that busy. But in reality, it's because our manager can't pay us. Place looks boring, unattractive. The smell of food is really potent that it drives away people from our retail area. That's my workplace in a nutshell. Story 49. Back when I worked at CompUSA, a year before they went bankrupt in 2007, I had to work Black Friday. Though we only had to show up shortly before midnight opening, the managers gave us the option of showing up at 6 p.m. Thanksgiving Day so we could get together, relax a bit, and take advantage of everything an empty store could offer. Some went into the training lab and watched movies on the projectors. Others of us went onto the sales floor and hooked up Xboxes for some Halo 2 LAN action. On top of this, our managers provided to us plenty of caffeinated products, like Red Bull and Starbucks Frappuccinos, for those who wanted to stay awake for the whole pre-open time. Shortly before midnight, one of our managers flags us down and tells us to come up to the roof and check out the crowd. At our best guess, the line of people had to extend an easy 600 to 1,000 feet, blocking the entrances to all nearby businesses. This was at T-minus 10 minutes, and the line only got larger. Once we got all our stuff packed up and stored in the break room, we all took our positions. The doors opened, and it was like watching sludge pour into a sewer. People were shoving and pushing themselves through the T-intersection door, shoulder to shoulder, and damn near breaking the glass of the entryway. Within about 10 minutes, there was literally no walking space in the store, which made it a bit of a problem for those of us who work the camera and MP3 player counters. Normally, we'd have to walk the product up to the checkout. As people filed in, we simply stuck post-it notes to the items with the names of the customer attached, and lobbed them over to the member service area in various checkout lanes. That's right, we actually had to throw the product just to get it to checkout. After a few hours, my coworker at the camera station noticed another coworker seemed to be missing, so I ventured out and tried to find him as best I could. 15 minutes later, I get to the break room/storage room, only to find him on the floor, sitting cross-legged, fist in his eyes, rocking back and forth while having a full-on meltdown. Apparently, he'd consumed 8 of the Frappuccinos and suffered a panic attack induced by caffeine. Once I worked my way back to the front of the store, we continued on. At some point, I think around 5 a.m. or 6, I heard some shouting at one of the checkout lanes, and saw 2 of my managers book it out of the office and over to one of the registers. As I was told later, one of the checkout clerks locked up mid-transaction and fell backwards as if he was frozen solid. 2 managers extracted him from the counter and took him back to the break room, where they later found out that he had drunk 4 to 5 Red Bull within a span of 3 hours prior to opening. By 7 a.m., our relief shift showed up, and everyone working the night got to leave. Both of the employees who had collapsed were fine, having been taken away from the crazy crap going on at the front. Since then, I've never worked anything so chaotic in my entire life. Story 50. I used to work at Walmart, so I've worked many Black Fridays. But the sad part is that it's no longer on Friday, it's Thursday. A couple of years ago, we had a really good manager decide that we would stop letting people in at 8:30. This was so that we could actually close at 9 and leave on time. Our sales were all over, and the rain checks were well past due. Some jackass customer called HQ and reported that she wasn't allowed in. My co-manager got fired for it. People in general just don't realize how effing stupid they are. Story 51. Ours wasn't that bad in perspective. Walmart, small town, but I actually froze in shock and thought I was going to die right as everything went down. Basically, our event started Thursday at 6 p.m. I had to be out front to guide traffic. At 5:56 p.m., one of the assistant managers at the back of the store decided it would be a great idea to start opening the plastic on some of the displays so customers wouldn't have to savage them open. A customer nearby made eye contact with her, looked at the ceiling, and let out a Viking scream. This Viking scream echoed throughout the store, and everyone else started screaming too. The whole thing lasted about 7 minutes, and everything was empty. I wasn't even outside by then. Crap was tense, but not for long. Story 52. I work in a bar, which is usually unaffected by Black Friday, but 2 years ago, the bar was stupidly busy. This guy comes up and orders 2 double Jameson's whiskey straight, no ice. It was the only spirit not on the optic. I pour it out and accidentally knock it against the bar, spilling a drop. I carry on because of how busy the bar was. He then says I work for Trading Standards, then proceeds to take out a Walter White-style chemistry set. He tests the whiskey to make sure we don't water it down and then measures the shot. Since I knocked it, there was 48 milliliters instead of the 50 milliliters it should have been. They then proceeded to take me to court because of short measurement. My company backs me up and sends a team of lawyers to cover me, resulting in a slap on the wrist and an optimal fine of $250.01 if I want to pay it, which I did not. Story 53. This will probably be buried and it isn't the most exciting, but I've had 2 women yelling skank and female dog at each other, with their husbands cowering behind them, in full view of their children and other people's children. At this point, I was just full-fledged angry. I work service desk at Walmart and have been a customer service manager, so I have experience in retail. At the point when they were about to walk up to each other, they were both in separate lines checking out, I walk up and say in a loud, firm voice, with my face turning red and gritting my teeth, "We have children around and families just buying their groceries. Let's grow up." It got very quiet, and no one in the immediate vicinity said anything else. It was almost magical. There is nothing more demeaning and mood-changing than pointing out how infantile adults are acting around other adults who can corroborate your story. Justice Boner achieved.